Greetings, M squared here, and today we are going to talk about congruent figures and their corresponding parts. So our learning target is that you're able to look at two figures and figure out which parts are corresponding parts. So remember, congruent, we're going to talk about congruent figures. Congruent figures are the same shape and size. So it says that triangle ABC is congruent to triangle DEF. And this is called a congruent statement, where you have what the shape is. In this case, it's a triangle that's congruent to another triangle. And if that's the case, then these are all the 6 corresponding parts. We have 3 angles that are congruent to 3 other angles and 3 sides that are congruent to 3 other sides. What we're going to do is we're going to mark them. So if angle A is congruent to angle D, then I'm going to go over here and I'm going to put an arc on A and an arc on D, one each, to show that those are corresponding parts. So that's how I can look at a picture and know which parts are corresponding, because of the number of arcs on the angles. So angle B is congruent to angle E. So on this one, on these two, B and E, I'm going to put 2 little arcs. And then finally, angle C is congruent to angle F. So I'm going to put 3 little arcs on those 2. And then I can look at the picture and automatically know which parts line up. Do the same thing with the sides. So AB is congruent to DE. AB is congruent to DE. I like to, across from them, put the same number of ticks as I put arcs. That's how I do it. I don't know if that's a necessary thing, but you will see that quite often. Not always. I like to do it that way. Okay, so then across from A, you're going to have the same angle, and across from the 2 ticks, you're going to have the 2 ticks. All right, so that's kind of how you mark it. And later we're going to talk more about corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. We're going to learn more about that later, but today it's just about identifying the corresponding parts. So you'll see over here they didn't do the 1 tick thing, but I like to do it that way. So let's look. Here's 2 triangles. They're kind of connected at X, and we are going to list all the congruent statements. So the first one they ask us to do is to list what would be congruent to X, Y, Z, and we've got to line it up. So I look at X and Y and Z, and it goes from 3 to 2 to 1. So I have to do the same thing over here. I got to go 3 to 2 to 1. So I'm going to say triangle TUX. And then I have to list all my other parts. Well, let's list sides first. So I'm going to just ZY. So the first, if I just say ZY, it doesn't matter if I say YZ or ZY, but once I say ZY, then on this one I have to go the same direction. So YZ, I'm going to have to go XU, because it goes from 1 to 2. So I'm going to say is congruent to XU, segment XU. Now I'm going to try segment XY. So again, first one doesn't matter, going from 3 to 2. So over here I have to go from 3 to 2. So I'm going to say is congruent to TU, segment TU. And then finally, the last one, I'm going to go ZX is congruent, went from 1 to 3, so I'm going to go XT. All right, next, I'm going to do the angles. So I'm just going to pick an angle. I'll go from this one to this one this time. So I'm going to say UTX. Now I could just say T on that one, but I can't do it on this one, so that's why I'm going to just make them the same. So UTX goes 2, 3, 1, so I need to go 2, 3, 1. So that's YXZ. YXZ. Now these are oriented the same, right? This one's not twisted and turned over. Sometimes they are. So that one, I started off with a simple one. And then we did this angle, so now we can do this angle. So TUX, angle TUX is going to be congruent to angle XYZ. And then finally, we're going to do this angle. So UXT is congruent to YZX. And those are the 7 congruent statements. The triangles, 3 segments, 3 angles. All right, let's try a little bit more. So you'll see here that these are not oriented the same, so it makes it a little bit more challenging. But we're going to list all 6 congruent parts, all 6 angles, all 6 segments. Well, first of all, the angles aren't marked, and I like to mark them. So I'm going to do the angle across from that 1 tick. I'm going to do 1, right? The angle across from the 2 ticks, I'm going to do 2 arcs. So 2 ticks, 2 arcs. And then these guys. And you can kind of tell those 2 are the obtuse angles. Okay, so now we're just going to, and this time we don't have to use 3 letters for the angles. So angle B is congruent to, so some people might say E if they hadn't marked it. So you got to be careful with that. It's congruent to angle F. Angle E is congruent to angle 2x, C. And then angle A is congruent to angle D. Now for the sides. We're going to look at the tick marks. So AC went from 3 to 2. So we're going to go DE because that goes from 3 to 2. And then let's see, we're going to go to AB, which goes 3 to 1. So 3 to 1. So AB, segment AB, is congruent to segment DF. And then finally, we're going to do this one. So EF is congruent to, and that went from 2 to 1. So I'm going to go 2 to 1, CB. And those are my 6 congruent parts. All right. I'm going to skip this one. For the notes, you guys can do that on your own because I want to make sure you practice. But I'm going to try this one because this one can be a little confusing. So let's look. A, E, D. Okay, so I'm going to just kind of show you that triangle, right? That's that triangle. What is it congruent to? Well, it's congruent, if AED, it's congruent to CDE. Triangle CDE. And then what I like to do sometimes is use these triangles. So I would say AE. Do you see how AE is the first 2 letters? AE, that's going to be congruent to the first 2 letters over there, CD. Sometimes I don't even look at the picture, I just look at this congruent statement. And then I just like ED is congruent to DE. And finally AD, so I use the first and the last one, is congruent to CE. So I didn't even look at the picture for that. You can do the same thing with the angles, except sometimes you need like the 3 parts, right? The 3 letters. So A and C, I can just say angle A is congruent to angle C because there aren't any other angles that could be. But on this one, I'm going to need a little more help. So CED, angle CED is congruent to, so CED is going to be congruent to ADE. ADE. And then I'm going to do these kind of, looks like 90-degree angles. I'm going to say AED. AED is congruent to CDE. And that's how we identify corresponding parts of congruent triangles. So remember, you're going to use your marks, you're going to use your congruent statements, and I hope you have fun with that. M squared, signing out.